G'day, listeners. This episode is proudly brought to you by our major sponsor, supshq.com.au. Use code BENS15 at checkout to receive 15% off on your next purchase. G'day, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the Matter Mentality podcast, where we talk all things training, nutrition, and psychology to optimize your performance. This episode, we are moving towards a new segment with an expansion to the team. We're going to start trying to pump these out probably fortnightly. I will aim to endeavor for, if you will. Don't know if that's going to occur, but we'll do our best. But we're joined by newest parts of the Matter coaching team, Tom Axelson and Rowan Herklotz. How are we, guys?
Good, man. Good.
Doing well.
So we are kind of, I guess, officially announcing the expansion of the team, which is pretty, I want to say, humbling to me. Like, this all started, I don't know, 3 years ago now, is me just chatting shit and sharing content. And now we actually have a podcast table of different experiences and knowledge to expand the client result, I guess, amongst the team, which is pretty cool to see for me.
Yeah, I mean, you're still just talking shit and whatever, but
yeah, I feel like nothing's changed, but anyway.
Because the role's just gone from being client talking shit to now also being coach and talking shit.
Yes.
Yeah, and now you got us two to talk more shit as well, so it's just like
well, that's what I mean. The expansion's gone from client you talking shit to now coach you talking shit. Our clients don't get any extra benefit from it. It's just more shit talking at a higher authority.
There is no more education added to this.
Yeah. The education standard stays the same. The shit talk just is a little bit higher.
Yeah. That's what people pay for.
That's what more do you want? But no, so the exciting part to me is that we're there's going to be a lot more experience to offer as well. I think a big part to coaching that people fail to understand in this day and age is that there is a part of being textbook coached and there's part of being like textbook based. But the other part is that I find some of my best results has come from coaching someone from my experience, not so much my knowledge. And I think between us, which is going to make it a bit more unique, is there's a variety of background, different coaching styles, but also very similar philosophies, experiences, the ways in which we do things that I think is going to be unique and beneficial to any client that comes on board. And it's something that we want to hold consistent, is that you'll get a unique approach or response from myself or Rowan or Tom, but you'll have underlying premises and principles and philosophies that will kind of be consistent across the board. So yeah, I kind of guess it's like a good open slather to dive into a bit of background between all three of us and the culmination of knowledge and information that we'll have to share and chat shit with. And I'm sure we can rip on some bodybuilding and other banter and whatnot as well.
We hope so.
Rip on you, man.
This is a half hour, 45 minutes of me copying shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, I guess the starting point will be just a bit of background, I guess, like between you two, because I'm sure everyone's heard enough of me talking. But I guess the background in coaching, background in knowledge, background in experiences and competing and things like that will kind of make us a bit different and unique. Yeah, because it's one thing to have a competitive background, it's another thing to have, I guess, an educated background, and it's another thing to have both of them together. So, Rowan, give us a bit of background about you.
All right. Well, I've been training for 9 years now. In the gym specifically. I've been playing. Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, but I've been playing sports since I was 6 years old. And then essentially found the gym and found bodybuilding after a couple of serious knee injuries playing rugby, and decided to give up rugby and moved into kind of full-time gym training and competed for the first time in 2015. And when I say competed, I lost a bunch of weight, looked really skinny on stage, and then kind of gave it up for a couple of years. And then came back and did season A last year, and then just starting prep for season B this year. So I guess that's my kind of gym training background. Studied physiotherapy, working as a physio at the moment, and just finished my master's in strength conditioning. So adding a little bit of more of the rehab side of things to my repertoire, and into I guess that athlete management and athlete training as well with my masters. So tying those things together into coaching and just trying to get, I guess, more performance based a little bit from my side of things. And then also the rehab stuff really interests me, and getting people back to training at full capacity, working through injuries, working around injuries, and never really stopping training. So I guess that's the T on me.
Yeah. Tom?
I suppose similar to Rowan in terms of how I got into gym. It was knee injuries in my case as well. So played sport like I feel like most kids do growing up anyway. Probably heavily soccer and swimming. So gym before the age of probably 19, 20 was basically non-existent. It was just kind of bits here and there for swimming related stuff, which was like using bands and shit. That's about it. So I did both my ACLs, not at the same time, but had them both operated on at the same time, and then more or less just got into the gym to try and strengthen them back up to play sport again, and then just kind of fell in love with training in general, and um, just kind of realized I was probably past the point of going back to team sports just because I would re-injure like scar tissue in my hamstrings and stuff each time. So I let that be, and yeah, so I've been making about 11 years now in the gym. So first competed in 2017. Yeah, back into 2017, and then again season A 2019, and then season B last year, which feels like a long time ago already. So yeah, so I've 3 seasons now, couple of unsuccessful preps in there just with COVID and stuff. But other than that, that's pretty much my side of the gym as well. In terms of coaching and everything, I think so. I did my PT Cert 3 and 4 originally at the same time as Ben did. So that's how we actually met. And then we've like also did like ASCA level 1 strength and conditioning along with him at the same time too. So that probably would have been what our first year after getting our certs. And then in
That feels
terms
like
of
so long ago. That feels like a long time
well, it
ago.
is. That was 2015, I think, 16 maybe.
God, you guys are
So
old.
8 years, yeah, yeah. So 8 years or whatever ago. And then yeah, just I guess learning in terms of what I've found works for me. Um, since then, and like doing other online things and whatnot. But yeah, I guess kind of trial and error on myself, and then determining what clients like to do, and seeing what works for them. And I just like a little bit of what do you call it? I'm just missing the word there. Trial and error, like in terms of them. If there's no urgent rush, um, for what their goals are and shit. So
I think it's like it's something that people are scared to say is that 90% of coach, I would 90 might be extreme. 75% of coaching a client that genuinely wants a body composition result is trial and error. Like any result that I've had so far, or anything that I've had work, or like systems that I've used, yeah, from each person you probably learn to add to the next person, or like can take away from that person, or like the problems and limitations they had. But majority of it is, yeah, there's that 25% that is the textbook and the data and like what the logic should say or what the procedure should operate as. But 75% of it easily comes back to, but what happened or what didn't work? Did that set range work? Or did this person's life get in the way? Did this happen or did this occur? And then being able to implement that on the fly and saying, well, the data says that 8 sets minimum should be what we need to stimulate a result. And a muscle group should respond in 8 to 10 sets minimum. And like that's a MEV. Okay, but this person required 20 sets. So do we stop at the 10 or do we push to 20? Like that
Me
to
and my
me is
arms, right?
yeah, exactly. Like everyone I've coached had a unique response to what the data says should respond, and then them being like, yeah, but this didn't happen. Like I've got, even amongst our team, clients on fucking butt calories and
Yeah.
clients that are on an absurd amount of calories, yet I know for a fact that one is pushing harder than the other.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Like, well, we all know who you're talking about. And it's insane that, like, credit to him in general that he can survive on that. And it's ridiculous that it's taken that much to get a result in the first place. Like, and then, like you said, you other end of the spectrum where people can lose weight eating a stupid amount of food. So, like, again, yeah, like it's not a textbook thing. Like, it's not one fit for everyone, and it's just something that you work like you have to figure that out. And I guess that's why, like, the 12-week prep has kind of disappeared, and you like training, like having someone on beforehand, because that's where you use that trial and error period
Yeah.
to determine what works for them and what doesn't.
And I think being flexible is so important as well for us as coaches. Like in anything, we can't look at someone like everyone from every level of physiology and psychology is completely different. Like if you go in expecting someone to respond one way or do one thing, the odds are that they're not going to do anything similar. So you have to be able to adapt. And I guess that comes down to what we do, which is track as much as we possibly can, because that tells us exactly what's going on. Like we can go, okay, cool, we've tried this, 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 and this. What worked? Did it work? Sweet. Okay, we're probably on the right track. Yeah, there might be something that's more efficient or more effective, and we might find that later down the track when we do need to change things. But at the same time, if it's working, why change it? But also, if it's not working, we go, cool, we've got the data to support it. Sweet. All right, we're going to try and modify this, this, and this, and that's going to get our result that way. So we have to just be able to adapt to those things. And that's why we have the systems in place to track everything, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Like to put it down to as if like you can have one system or one style only and all your clients have to adhere to that, or like this is what gets a result, I think is just setting up way too many clients for failure. Like as a coach, you can probably systemize and standardize to a certain level, like to a certain degree, you know, your onboarding process, the experience they have from day one, limitations or issues getting through the system. Like we've had across now being around for 3 years, we've had clients that the system is perfect, yet somehow for their phone, their computer, whatever it is, it didn't work. Or like the email didn't send or the chain didn't break. So that systemized process, it works for everyone, and then we can figure out that hiccup. The macro setting or like the nutritional setting, we can have a standardized approach where we're like, hey, we want you on Chronometer. I don't care if you're aware of tracking food yet, but I want you to download Chronometer, set it up, and just start putting food in that you can understand. What did you eat today? Chicken. Okay, well, just tell me you ate chicken. How much of it? Figure it, like have a guesstimate as best you can. And then you might have people who are like the most adept, like nutrition tracker ever. Okay, cool. I know that I'm going to get exact measurements off you. You're weighing everything, you're scaling everything. It's all like quantified, mapped out exactly what you're eating to the brand, to the specific food type, whatever. You can systemize it to a degree, but at that point where it starts individualizing and a coaching system takes off, is that we don't have that template because you can't. Everyone's so unique and different that the second you try to standardize that, it just takes out the human error aspect that would just probably fuck them up.
Yeah, I think you just have to see what people respond to, and just you can give everyone the tools, and I guess that's what we're here for, is to give you the tools to succeed, and guide you towards what we know and have experienced what works. But at the end of the day, like it comes down to one, you doing the work, and two, us adapting to what work you do and where you're at from there.
Yeah.
And I think a follow on from what you said before, like I think if you come in with one cookie cutter approach, like I think that's just wholeheartedly arrogant from your end. Like we don't know everything. We are constantly studying and improving and changing and going back on things that we've done before. And I think for you to be like every client should respond to this is just arrogant and like I don't know. Like I think you need to look at what you're doing and why you're doing it if that's the case.
Yeah, like it'd get to a point to me like if we started approaching it that way, I would throw in the towel, because to me, then it's just become about taking money, not about actually individualizing and helping someone at a unique level. Like
Well, it's not interesting either. Like
yeah,
if you're doing it that way. what do you get
imagine,
out of it? Like in terms of accomplishment level, like I I can hand someone a program I wrote 5 years ago for myself, whatever, and they can go and do it. But I didn't tailor anything to them. I feel no accomplishment to that if they got something out of that because it's just like, oh, well, that's good, but it's not like I tried it hard to make that work for you.
Mm.
yeah, you got to as a coach, like, well, for me, I get a completely different sense of fulfillment and satisfaction if I get someone to, like, some of my guys that have given up alcohol because A, they wanted to, not because I forced it on them, but like getting some of my guys that have gone from 4-day binges to literally drinking zero beers or Pepsi Max when they go out gives me a completely different sense of satisfaction to someone that I write a programming for and like get on stage and modify body composition and get a result there. Like, the sense of satisfaction as a coach has to be a big part of why you do it. Otherwise, yeah, you can template shit and just start dishing out like, well, here's a bikini booty program for you for, 20 of the girls that I work with, but they all look completely different with different structures, anatomies, structure, conditions, levels of body fat, training histories, food tolerances, food exposure, calorie targets. Like, oh, but this should work because booty girl. Like, you want to be a
But
bikini girl, right?
it only takes one or two of them to uh, get results from that, and then they can market that, and then it
Yeah.
works for them, doesn't it? So they
Yeah.
just don't ever market the other people, the other 90%
Yeah.
of people that it doesn't work for.
Yeah. Let's use a survivorship bias and say, hey, the two that fucking followed through with this and survived it, we got a result from them. What about the other 80% that atrophied? Don't worry about those. Don't worry about those guys.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not your business. Don't
Yeah.
worry
Not
about
not important. Not
No,
important.
that was their fault because they just didn't stick to the
that.
plan.
They didn't have the willpower to follow through. Terrible coaching 101. They didn't have the willpower. That's what it was. You've nailed it.
It's not that you lacked flexibility in being able to adjust. Yeah.
But I guess like between all three of us, the commonality is that well, I think even getting into coaching, one of the interesting aspects is that all three of us have an injury or disabled related history that got us into competing and training, which I think is a different level of, I don't know, gives it a different level of meaning, I guess, to me, is that like I didn't get into it because I was like, oh, I started off jacked and this was super easy. For me, it was like dealing with my back and shit. That the one thing that I could control and be competitive with was how I responded to my recovery and my rehab and getting back into the gym, or what was the thing that they told me I couldn't do that now I want to do, and actually start to grow from that. Like looking at I remember my post rehab phase was looking at the exercise list that they had that I could do, and then gradually increasing that list. So that became like my objective measure of like successful rehabilitation was, well, they said I'd never do all these things, and here's a list of stuff I can do. I'm going to gradually increase the list of stuff I can do by just figuring out what worked or what did or didn't cause pain and what ranges of motion and what limitations. And then I was like, oh, but also alongside of that, my body was responding and I was like getting bigger or getting leaner, or I was tightening up, or I noticed better quads, or my back looked wider. So then it became like, well, I also love bodybuilding. Now I've got an excitement to do bodybuilding. I can't play rugby league ever again. I'm going to train. And it still gave me that sense of satisfaction, a whole different level of enjoyment in the gym. But yeah, I guess to me, it gave a different meaning as to why I went there versus I was just born big and I want to train.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
look,
think
it definitely wasn't something that came naturally by any means. And like I would even say, when I first started going to the gym, it was just with a group of guys at college. And honestly, we trained probably biceps and that's about it. So like it was like 3 times a week. We go in, do preacher
Body pump,
curls, maybe some dumbbell curls, and see you later.
pre uni
The
night,
first year.
pre Friday night, pre Valley night.
Yeah, yeah, just before going out, right? So yeah, look, that probably helped in a way because it was like it was just fun because you were just there, it was just banter, whatever. But then and then it obviously started to develop like once the injuries kind of were at a point where I was like, look, I need to take this seriously because I want to try and do that again. So it gave it a bit more purpose. Whereas beforehand it was just as a fun thing to do. So I guess yeah, well to me it was just finding a purpose for it and then the love for it developed from that as well. So probably a little bit opposite in that it's not like I walked in like in love with working out to start with. Like don't get me wrong, I used to actually hate swimming training and things like that. Like I was a terrible trainer. I could show up on a competition day and perform somehow, as opposed to how well I would be considered like in a training session. So it's a completely different thing now to have to perform basically every time you step into the gym. Because now the show day itself or the competition day is nothing. It's showing the work you've put in previously, which I mean is the same as any other sport still, but there's less give, I feel like in terms of it because it's such a slow grind to improve anything.
Mm. I think that like we're all in similar situations coming from a sporting background to then going through rehab to then finding the gym after that. And I think that's a pretty good lesson for everyone out there is that all of us have just said, like you two have both just said that you found the gym first and then you got into it
Mhm.
and then you started to get results and then you fell in love with it. So we're not here like, yo, we walked into the gym and we loved it from the bat. We went to the gym for a reason. We trained. We then saw results, and then we went, "Hey, this is pretty good. I enjoy this. I might
Yeah.
actually be okay at this." And then you fall in love with the process of that, rather than kind of like falling in love with what we looked like to start,
Mhm.
or what we could get from it from now. And I guess that's something we see a lot now in social media is that people fall in love with the look and they go, I want to look like that. I want to be that. And then they get into the gym. But where's your emotional attachment to that? Where is your emotional kind of depth to achieve? Like bodybuilding is not easy.
Yeah.
Like all of us do it and we do it day in, day out,
Mhm.
24/7, 365 days a year. Like people ask me how long I've been prepping for, and I'm like, I've been prepping for 2.5 years for this show. Like my whole life is prep. And yes, I have cuts and bulks and stuff, but it is still prep. So without the emotional attachment to the love of training and the love of the journey, and that, as Tom said, like the show day isn't, it's not like on a sporting day where you can turn up and you can just have adrenaline, you can perform. Like, yeah, sure, adrenaline's there on show day, but if you haven't done the work, you
Yeah.
you can't perform regardless. So I think it's just interesting that we've all come from the same place and realized that we go for purpose, we get results, and then we get love and motivation. Love and motivation don't come first.
Yeah. I think a big thing for me was like the um, gym was so almost like stark opposite to why I do it now. When I was playing for I was playing rugby league. Ask anyone that's still a listener now or follower that is a mate from high school or around that time. I was like 55, 60 kilos going through year 11. Like we played in a grade where teams we played against had Fijian internationals weighing 120. Like for me, it was more about trying to train for power or explosion because I was a halfback getting thrown around or a hooker that was just too small. So it was like, well, in my head, I wasn't worried about, well, I've got to be 120 kilos on stage to be, the next Ian Valier. I have to be, more agile and stronger to handle being the hit because I'd be the kind of halfback that would take a shot to put someone else in a hole. So my back was just constantly getting pumped. So I've got to be stronger in that regard, but I have to be bigger. Now, like coming out of that, obviously that injury, the excitement was, well, if I'm never going to play a footy again, well, now I can dedicate all that training and just see, do I have the response to this? And that obviously started with firstly just finding progressive overload in rehabilitation, like to find the progressive overload in, okay, well, I can do yoga 3 times a week. Can I do it a fourth? Or I was doing my core work 3 days a week. Can I do an extra session? All that sort of like really mundane basic shit. And I was like, well, that same premise applied there. Now can it apply when I just train? And I want to look like Arnie. And I've read all the Arnie magazine and the fucking, the bodybuilding encyclopedia and whatnot. And now I just want to see if that metric applies. And I'm going to do 3-hour training sessions and not eat enough food because that was what we all did. But now, like gradually over time, you get to a point where like now I just have a genuine love for just pushing the data, but also pushing like the intensity, and that just it grows over time. I think where, like you said, kind of people just think that you look at TikTok and whatever Instagram now, they're so accessible that you see it, and it's like they think that they have to train that way now. Like if I did Bumstead's program and he told me to do this burner or this session, but I don't look like Bumstead. But I'm training to look like Bumstead instead of just training to fucking have fun and be jacked about it.
Yeah, people definitely get into it for the wrong reasons, or they think it's like a quick kind of, not a quick fix, but I mean, they think the process takes a lot shorter time than it probably does. Um, and like, yeah, like Ron said before, and just touch on this, it's like none of us got into the gym as something originally that we necessarily enjoyed. It's like we had a purpose and something we wanted to achieve at the end of it, and that was going to help us get there. So I mean, if that's your case, is that you want to lose weight or you want to be able to run faster or whatever, like that's your goal at the end of the day. You go into the gym, you don't have to enjoy it to start with. You're just doing it to meet your goal. We all developed a love for it just over time. And it just became habit, essentially. It's like we did it enough to become habit. And it's like, okay, we're going to do this because we do it every day. That's what we do. It's like, oh, I actually enjoy this now. So it's not like people don't need to think that they should go to the gym for the first week and then just fucking love it. Like it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
not going to happen. It's like if you don't like it in the first week, it doesn't mean you need to just like, nah, it's not for me. Like think about your goal and how you're going to get there. And at the end of the day, like if that requires you to put in a little bit of work, then and that isn't what you want to do, then the goal isn't for you. That's not a meaningful goal because you don't want to work for it.
Yeah, I think
And I
it's
think that's why we have the goal setting sheet, and that's why we push that so hard. Is because like your goals have to mean something to you. They have to be important to you because if they're just I want to look like CBum, the odds are you're not going to look like CBum no matter what you do, no matter how
yeah.
long you train for, no matter what. You are never going to get to. Well, you might. Don't get me wrong. Like never say never, but the odds are you're not going to be the best of the best in a
The 1%
subjective
of the 1%.
body
Yeah.
comp
Well, like
sport. Like
he's a generational anomaly, but even anatomically, like even if you're training the exact same way that Bumstead is, you're just not going to look like Bumstead. Even if you become the next Bumstead in the sense of like you win 5 classic physiques and you've got to explode in YouTube and fucking whatever else, even in that sense, however you train, you're still not going to look like Bumstead. You're going to look like you. So the idea of like training for the look or appearance of someone else is just not a sustainable fuel source of motivation as a goal. And that's just going to lead you to just not handling what comes with prep. So I think a very, it's not negative because it's not their responsibility, but it's the accountability of the person watching it. If you just see someone prepping, like you watch Bumstead year on year, he's continually getting bigger and better. And like, if you're only an amateur follower of bodybuilding, you might watch him year after year on the Olympia stage. And, your only exposure is like, hey, this year to this year, he's gained 10 pounds and he looks fucking massive. His condition's improved and someone's putting a before and after. You might look at that and go, well, year on year, I can do that. Not looking at the amount of drugs and the consistent food and the priority of sleep and the exposure to not much other stimulus. He doesn't go out and party and do all these things and lack sleep and not get his meals in. You're not seeing that stuff. So you're just straight away like, oh, but I go 4 or 5 times a week like Chris does. Why don't I look like him? Or like, I train to failure on 1 set out of my training session. That's what he says. Why don't I look like that? Or I do all this accessory work, but I've never seen him and his previous programs that did all this heavy compound lifting. Why don't I look like him? Like it's so unstimulating in a motivational sense that you're not going to fall in love with it because you're just going to lose interest and be fucking bored.
And I think people think that, like, I think the thing that we see in people coming up, and we see it in the gym all the time with the kids coming up and who have the social media generation, the TikTok generation, is that they see the end product and they go, yeah, I can do that. But none of them have any idea on what a prep actually feels like. And like the singular focus you have to have, the takeaways you have to have from the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. It's fun. It's all well and good to be good in the gym. It's all well and good to train hard. It's all well and good to look good on the beach. But getting to stage lean and getting to bodybuilder lean is a whole different ballgame. And I'm sure you boys can attest to that. Like it's not something where you're like, yeah, this is cruisy. I'm loving this process. This is easy. I could do this twice a year, every year, blah blah blah. Like it's not how this works.
Yeah, you can't do a prep unless going back to what I said, unless you enjoy just training and enjoy the process of it, and like you want to test yourself. Outside of that, like why would you prep? Like you mentioned, it takes a toll on social life, like any relationships in your life, and things like that. Like that you might not think will affect you necessarily. Like, oh, I can still go out, I just won't have a drink or whatever. But you don't know that peer pressure is a thing for a reason. And if you have your friends around you are not involved in that bodybuilding scene or whatever as well, then they're not going to understand by any means, and they're going to like, oh, it's one night. What doesn't matter? Like, it's not going to make a difference, and it does. So, like, your environment is going to determine a lot of things there too. And yeah, if you don't love the process and whatever, a prep is not for you.
Yeah,
No, you got to prep for clout, mate. You got to prep for clout. That's the important bit.
Just for the Instagram
yeah,
photos.
just for the gram. Just gonna do it.
I just want to prep to do a photo shoot, bro. I don't want to compete. I just want to look good in a photo shoot. Come on, man.
But by all means, feel
I'm
free
not
to
even
do
against
that.
that. Fucking do it. I would
But you only
100%
need to
prefer
prep till like 8 weeks out. Like,
a photo shoot for most, and this is not in any way an offense whatsoever or intended to be rude. The average female photo shoot I'm seeing, you're barely getting to 8 to 10 weeks out of prep. Like you can get away with maybe 10, like you get like 10 weeks shy of getting on stage, do a photo shoot, and you'll get the same clout and you'll get the same female sisterhood support group. You'll get the same pump up on your post. You'll get the same like praise as if you got on stage. I honestly would argue it's exactly this. You probably get more.
Because like when you're on stage, you look kind of sick, whereas like 10 weeks out, you look just like good. So you probably get more benefit from doing it earlier than rather than pushing yourself to the end.
yeah, and like we are a small portion of people, like, right? So it's like you everyday kind of person or Gen Pop doesn't necessarily find someone that's super lean attractive. Like,
No.
Yeah,
it's not.
exactly.
Yeah,
We all want
it's like,
female
oh, you have
attention, but
veins
like,
running everywhere and shit. Like, people aren't necessarily gonna like that.
no,
Yeah.
people think you're weird.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like a big part of, I think, the like pre-screen criteria for me, like we talked about this a bit on the training episode, Tom, at the gym, was that we have almost like I have a very strict approach to like whether I think someone's ready to prep or not. And it's honestly got like, it takes all those factors into consideration. Like, are you someone who's trained before? Are you someone who's even dieted before? Are you someone who's gotten to at least a level of condition that would warrant a photo shoot? Are you someone who's been exposed to those things? Are you someone who's been lean and then off season again? Do you have like, if I'm coaching, I'm noticing that there's stressful relationships, or like, you're being like pressured by parents or friends or a partner, or girlfriend or boyfriend or husband to go do other things, yet you're supposed to be in a stricter, more aggressive phase of cutting. And you're finding that hard because there's so many external pressures to what we're trying to do. For me, I'm like, well, you're not ready to prep. We haven't had those conversations with relationships or friends yet to say, hey, I can't actually do this. Like, I can't go out and see those things, and you pressuring me makes it harder. If you're not in that position where you've had those conversations, I don't even think we should be conversing about prepping yet, because you're just psychologically, environmentally, or psychosocially ready to be in a prep to the degree of like condition that I want to get you to. I just don't think like enough people are actually ready for that stern conversation, or at least have set up their environment to say, look, for the next 20 weeks, or not even 20 weeks, realistically, you should have the nuts and bolts of prep established almost a year out. Like, you're at least at the point where everyone is aware of what you do. Your friends are aware of how you live. Your parents and your family are understanding. Your job and work know that this is what you do. Like, it's not like hey, Friday beers, you coming? Like, they know how you operate. There's no pressure about the cakes on the table at the office and all that sort of shit. The relationships around you, but also your lifestyle factors, your training schedule, your sleep schedule, like all of that is facilitated towards your training. And if it's not, we're either getting that to that point so that you can prep, or we just don't prep. We might do a photo shoot instead, or just work on body composition. But I think if you haven't got those factors already established at like 12 months out, we need to spend at least that 12 months building that up so that we can say, hey, you've ticked all the boxes to get into prep,
Well,
to even handle it.
This is what, yeah, that's what Ryan said before. He's not in prep now. He's been in prep for 2.5 years. Like, he's been ticking those boxes for that period of time. So I hate, I don't like, I mean, I get it to a degree, but like when, like say Fuad in his podcast talks about flipping a switch when prep starts. Like, why are you flicking the switch now? Like, shouldn't you have been
Yeah.
training with full intensity beforehand and trying to, in off season, which is now kind of like more improvement season, I suppose you say, like, shouldn't you be trying to do most of the work there? The
Yeah.
prep is just the lean out part, right? Like to show what you've been doing in your off season.
Hmm.
Yeah, because you got that point in time where like the prep realistically, the reason why it gets so hard, I think, is because it's not the physiological aspect. Like if you're well set up, you're already doing those things. You're sticking to a nutritional strategy. You've got training consistently exposed to a stimulus. You're progressively overloading, you're training with intensity. You're probably doing your cardio. Like all those things are happening already. The prep and the way I referred to it on like the STC podcast is it's more so instead of like flicking a whole switch and going from off to on, is that you're going from fourth to fifth or fifth to sixth gear. That's
Yeah,
the
you're
only
turning the
accurate way
dial.
to describe
Yeah,
it. Is that like you're shifting up a gear tops, maybe. Like that's the only way that it makes logical sense. And from there, it might become that there's a little less freedom, there's a little less leniency. You're more accurate with like it might be a 10% leeway in macro, so now it's like 1 to 2%. There's
yeah,
usually I might have a 6 to 7 hour sleep cycle if I decide to go out. It's now 7 to 9. I don't miss step targets, I don't miss cardio targets. I'm not eating random shit and not tracking it. There's no free meals. That stuff kind of becomes tightened up. That to a lot of people sounds strict as fuck. To us, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Like that's just the next level up. I've done all the work in the off season. I'm still like, none of us, I would argue, train shy of 2 RER. Not even remotely close. Like genuine 2 RER at least to 0 every single week. And that is like off season through prep.
well, it's boring if you train any other way, to be fair.
Yeah, as evidenced by every single one of my comments on my deload week this week, which was boring.
I don't even my deload weeks now. I just don't go.
Yeah.
I just take the
Which I
week
mean,
off.
like, I can understand that because like I had this conversation with one of the boys in the gym the other day, and it's like, why do you like he's like, I don't want to come into the gym if I'm not sending it. Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would rather just have a week to just chill out and then
Yeah.
come back to the gym when I'm ready and be super hyped for it. Whereas me, like, I don't know what to do with my time if I'm not in the gym. So I'm
Do it
like,
with my
okay,
hands.
cool. What do I do with my hands? Where do I go? Like, what do I do with my
How
brain
many
at
wanks
this
can I have in
point?
a
So
day?
let's find out. Lucky this deload's over. But for me, I'm like, sweet, like we do a 50-50 deload where I just go in and
Yeah.
do 2 sets at half weight and I just cruise through and I still get a little bit of a sweat on. But for me, like in prep now, what it does is it gives me the time to go in and I can do steps, I can do
Yeah.
very light training session, I do my cardio, I do my posing. And
Yeah.
it keeps for me, like this is a big thing I push to my clients is that it keeps the habits and routines in a
Yeah.
block. So you've got a block for exercise and you've got a block for training. Okay, sweet. Even if I'm deloading, so my intensity goes from here to here, I still have that same block of time.
Yeah.
And therefore that habit does not change regardless week to week. So I'm not, as Tom does, like I don't take a whole week off and then have to go, oh, I've got to go to the gym again. I'm like, sweet, I'm at the gym anyway. I'm doing what I do normally. It's just that I'm not pushing myself to the limits. And then next week I can just go, cool, still rolling.
yeah, and I mean I understand that. And in the prep, I still would like if I had to deload in a prep, I would still be going like for those purposes as well, just to try and stay like activity levels to a certain degree. Um, but again, with like the 50 as well, like 50 and 50 in the past, so that I do feel like I'm doing something, I would just, if I'm picking half the weight or I'm picking half the reps, I basically just cluster everything together. So if it's like, if I have 2 sets, like or 4 sets at half the weight, I would just make it 2 sets but
60
like
reps.
keep
Fuck
the
it.
amount of reps. So it's like 2 sets of 20 instead of 4 sets of 10 at half the weight. So by the time you get in 20, it's still like you start to struggle, but it's still the same volume total over the session. So I mean, it's half of what I'm normally doing. But yeah, you feel like you're still hitting like 2 to 1 IRR by the end of it. So
Yeah, just
Yeah.
decreasing some tendon load and some tendon stress.
that all comes back to even us then in the aspect of like we're trying to find ways to make the time off even harder. Like we're like if we go in at all, obviously it's going to be like we need to make it at least stimulating and exciting, especially if we're in prep. Like we're looking at it from the aspect that, and this is I think probably something that all three of us have exposed ourselves over time with like what 15, nearly 20 years of competing history, not in like year to year, but more so like over time of training and competing history between us, that you probably find that you gradually get better at as well. Like you get better at taking up that next gear and like the intensity increases and your training skill gets better. You hone the skill of prep better and better each time because that's what it requires. You know, the first time you did it, you looked that good or you could have been better or you weren't as full or you weren't as big. Okay, so how do I improve that? And that's where we're sort of talking about there is that, you know, I see it being pushed as like these 20-week random preps, like, hey, you know, you want to get on stage and look your best as an absolute babe on stage or an absolute jack dude, like I can get you there in 20 weeks. They can't. Like what you can't do in 20 weeks what we've been doing over 2 years or 3 years. Like it's not a feasible process, which is why, you know, we advertise, hey, you want to do season B next year? It's already season A. Like we're already past season A now. I need at least, like, if we map this out in a periodized process, I need a priming phase for you to come on board to make sure you have no niggles and injuries, to make sure your body's right, that everything's healthy, that we're building up to a maintenance level of calories before we decide to cut or bulk, or cut or grow, tighten you up to a better position, increase the runway length of time that we can have an off season for, work on the weaknesses that you have before you even consider stage. Okay, now we've actually got to a decent position of calories, body composition, muscle mass, and size. Now we've got to hold this, make sure we solidify it. Then we run you into a pre-prep phase to tighten up. Life is on point. Your systems are in check. Your boxes are being ticked. Oh, now we can do the 24-week prep. That all isn't happening in 24 weeks. Like that idea, like you can kind of get away with it at the pro status because your life is literally competing. That's it. That is you're a professional athlete. But for the average person to see like these people that push like almost use it as like a body transformation, but for stage, like no, you cannot do it and actually get a decent result or feel good about yourself or, you know, feel like you've achieved something significant because you haven't dedicated the same effort or time that everyone else has. And the only way you probably can do that is in that 20 weeks, you destroy a whole lot of gear.
Don't tell me with a good time.
So how do I sign up?
Yeah, is that are we offering that as a
is that a
service?
sale? Was this a sales pitch?
Yeah.
Um,
But I also think, like,
and
don't get me wrong, like I think the transformation stuff has its place. But I
Oh, for
think
sure.
that long term, if you want to be a bodybuilder, like we're looking at like what do we have in place for us, like in terms of like long-term plans? Like we're looking at like the end of this decade being competitive, like and going
Yeah.
to the next level. Like it's not something where I'm like, yo, I'm gonna go pro next year. Like, yeah, I'm ready to roll. Like, yeah, I just turned 26. Cool, 27, I'm going pro. Like, no
Yeah.
chance. Like maybe by the time I'm early 30s, I might get there. And like I know that that's how long it takes, even with supplements, to get to that next level. Like it's not something where I'm sitting here being like, yeah, cool, I'm ready to go. Like, no chance.
yeah, I mean, outside of your genetically elite kind of people like your Nick Walkers and whatever, people aren't getting there at a young age. Um, and it's a long endeavor. And I agree that the transformations have their place in terms of people probably should do a transformation before if they're like, oh, I want to do a prep just for the experience, um, then a transformation is probably the better option because it's like, okay, there's a diet, stick to a routine, whatever for 12 weeks minimum. Um, and at the end of the day, if you can't do that, then you're not going to do a prep, are you? So, I mean, it's a good test the waters kind of idea. And yeah, if you want to do your photo shoot at the end of that, everything, it's like, there's a deadline at 12 weeks. It's not something like 20 weeks long, all that kind of stuff. Like, it's much more suited to a lot more people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think the idea, like the idea of the experience, like if we look at it from even that realm, the idea that you get to just experience the NRL or you get to just experience like the EPL or Major League Baseball, like you don't get to go from the grandstand like, oh, I'd really like to experience that. And if you do, it's probably on a weekend away from the rest of the crowds, away from anyone, away from being judged, probably on like a park level with your mates, throwing a ball, pitching a ball, kicking a ball, whatever it is, and you just have a laugh about it. To think that you go from like, hey, I watch my girlfriend's friend's best friend's sister look super hot in a tiny G-string in front of 1,000 people, but also I haven't addressed or unhinged the fact that I have my own internalized insecurities around body image, self-esteem, self-worth, my relationship with food, because I've never been lean before. I think I want to do that. Like that, it's so conflated and misconstrued, I think, as to like why you prep. And like it is a competition. Like there's it like, yeah, you can do it. I'm doing it to be the best me and beat me. Cool. But also you're against 20 other people that are going to be used to judge you on yourself. Like, I don't care what other tangible, like subjective metric you want to measure about how internally good you feel about yourself. And, you know, I got there, so I feel great. There is also a part of you that is immediately compared to the person next to you as to how you look. And then whether or not that's worth a place or that's worth rewarding, because that's what it is. Like that's why I look at things like challenges or photo shoot preps and stuff like that as a different story. The photo shoot is literally just you by yourself on a beach, at a gym, in a bikini, in posing trunks, in briefs, whatever, you male or female, and no one else is compared to you. The next level to that is that you're being on stage. Yeah, sure, you can say it's against you. You can say I'm trying to be the best me possible. That's cool. If you want to be the best you possible, you don't need to get on stage for that. You can literally just continue that endeavor forever. But the minute you add a competitive edge to it, then it becomes about, especially when it's tied to how we look, well, all of a sudden you're now experiencing, if you will, if that's what you want to call it, it's an experience that we're picking out your weakest body parts, your fattest body parts, and how shit of an effort you gave because, well, you're not as lean as the next person, so therefore you didn't diet as hard, as long, or as intense. Like, you're now being judged against that. So to me, it's a fucking horrible notion to think that I'm just going to do this for an experience. Like, to me, if it was to come down to say I want to do it for an experience, it's because you're athletically inclined and competitively driven, and that's the experience you want to have. I want to take my competitive nature to the next level. Not, I want to experience what it's like to be on stage, try and get lean, and then probably binge myself 2 months after.
Yeah, I definitely think like you have to be, I think there needs to be more knowledge out there about the after effects of a prep. Like, I know that like it's all like out there on social media, but like Joe Mansell put something up the other day about like how difficult post prep is, and that's coming from a man who's competed for 25 years straight or whatever, however long he's competed for.
We all know it, hey?
Yeah, but you don't know it until you go through it, and no one tells you, especially at the first one, especially in a body transformation one. They're like, yeah, well, cool, we get to show days this day, and my coaching finishes the day after that. Have fun. And like, I think it creates these things where like it took me, like, there's a reason I didn't compete for 5 years, like, or 6 years. Like, I mentally, like, after my first show was a complete wreck body image wise for a long time. And I know that like often it's always female based in this stuff, but like guys get exactly the same thing. We just don't talk about it. And like it took me a solid 6 years and good coaching and a good plan to get to the point where I'm like, yeah, I'm mentally ready for this. And it still sucked and it's still hard every day. So there needs to be knowledge around this is what this process is going to get you to on stage or to photo shoot. But this is what you need to do afterwards, because otherwise transitioning back to normal life, like it's going to hurt and it's going to be hard and you need to have a plan in place.
It, like, even when when you've experienced it before, it's still hard going through it again. And it's just like,
you're just aware that the hard is coming.
Okay, yeah, she's like, yeah. He's like, okay, com's done, sweet. And then your brain's just like, now we can have some freedom. But at the end of the day, it's like you still need to taper that in. And it is so hard to not just eat until you are like you don't get full. So like, yeah, it's just not a manageable thing, regardless of how prepared you think you are. And so it's like, yes, I agree in that a lot more coaches may do it now, and it's a good thing that you have someone there in your corner to guide you through that process as well. Like even my first comp, my coach at the time, he made it a thing like when I signed up that yes, you paid for coaching still for a couple of weeks after the comp,
Yeah.
So I've actually had good experience in it. And my first time it was like, okay, so I actually had him still there providing a plan to like taper things up and whatever. And yeah, 2 weeks probably isn't still long enough, but it was better than nothing.
Yeah.
And particularly being the first time, I would have had food. I would have just been like, I'm hungry, I'm gonna eat whatever the fuck I want, and I would have just blown out. Like, so I mean, yeah, like it doesn't get easier regardless. And like even this time around, same things, like I'm hungry, I want to eat. You feel like you should have the freedom after 20 weeks of dieting, but you still don't. And you're like, where does it come? So
But I think even that's like another like indicative reason of why most people need to stop looking so short-sighted. Like the prep view is always like the experience of show. I just want to do a show, or like I want to get on stage once, or I'll see if I like competing. But you're not looking at the long term. Like, do you want to be a competitive bodybuilder? Because this is a lifestyle of continued choices and continued actions over a period of time that could go on for the better part of 2 decades. And the idea that like, I want to go back to normal life. Well, like we said at the start, realistically, your normal life should be this. Like, not to the point where, you're removing friends and cutting everyone out like forever, but, it should be very easy for you to go up or down a gear if you need to make that shift where you can kind of go, hey, look, fucking friends and family, next 6 months, not doing sweet FA. I'll come around when I can, expect that. Or, hey, I'm in off season, like you guys want to go get a burger or have some pizza or, this is where I can fit this stuff in. But like for us still, the phases between shows, I'm not going out getting shit-faced, getting on drugs and drinking and partying and not sleeping and missing meals and things like that. Like I'll be up at night, especially if I had a day of work where I've missed food. I'm getting that food in, probably the same meals. I'm not making it any easier on myself. I'm probably getting those same meals. I'm going to go to bed full. I'm like, oh, I fucked up and missed some of my meals here. I'm getting them in because I know missed MPS, missed protein consumption, missed calories. I drop weight, I fall back, I lose size, it washes off, all that shit. So I know for me to be above the normal state that my body wants to be in, it's a continued exposure experience. I can't do it for one show and be like, oh, it's all done now, whatever. The idea that, the I've done one show, I'm going to go back to normal life. Just, it probably like, it shouldn't even be a consideration, if you will, that I'm going back to normal life. Like your normal life to me is if you want to get on stage, it means to me your normal life is training, nutritional adherence or nutritional knowledge. Like, yeah, you might add your cardio and posing and stuff, but likelihood is most of your normal life revolves around doing this. So it's like we do this over the span of an extended view of, 5 years, 10 years. That's the normal life. That's not something you just sort of like turn off and on and go, oh, well, I'm going to go from 6 months of sending it at the nightclub to now 6 months of sending it in the gym.
Yeah, but I don't think like I also want like preface like we're not saying don't compete. Like I don't think that's the thing. Like
between
competing
20
is
years of
awesome
competing here, we love competing.
We love to compete, but at the same time, we just have reasons to do it, and we structure our lives to do it because this is what we love. And I think you have to have that knowledge of why you do it, what you're passionate about, and like a big thing is what you're willing to sacrifice for it. So I guess what we're saying is compete if you love it, but don't compete just for the hell of it.
and just to go with that too, it's like obviously you need to try it to know if you're gonna love it or
For sure,
not.
yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you can't just like you may need to experience it, for the lack of a better word, to know whether you're gonna enjoy that process or not, and you can deal with it and whatever. So
Well,
yeah,
that's like kind of like
catch 22 in that regard, but
I guess, and this is where kind of like the way I've started to really systemize it is the gradual exposure at both ends of extremity for a client. Like if I know I want you to tighten up before, like when we started work, like we start working together and I want you to be in a leaner position, we might go through a 4-week aggressive phase so that I can see and, might ask you what your nutritional history is. Like, can you handle dieting? Have you done it before? Yeah, I've been lean before. I've dieted before. Okay, cool. We do a 4-week aggressive phase because, you've given me the all clear. You're mentally sound. You're in a good position. That's going to give me an indicator of how extreme you can diet or how hard you've dieted before. If you're like crying, mercy at 2,500 calories, well, things are going to get a lot worse than that. So that's a good indicator to me. We're going to need some more time to graduate those extremes. Same time. Oh, have you grown before? Have you been on a surplus? Yeah, I eat to grow. Okay, what's your food intake? I put you on 3,000 and you're a 100 kilo man, and 3,000 is suddenly like you're feeling sick or full or can't eat more food. Okay, again, we've got a lot more to go here. Like
I
we
feel
need to
attacked, but
we
anyway.
I
The
mean,
deficit's hard.
my first off
Bulking
season,
is hard.
my first off season, I was on 2,500 calories and felt sick. Anxiety and stress is not a good indicator for food. But in that essence, like the gradual exposure should come across the coaching experience instead of like kind of getting to prep and saying, now I'm going to start dieting. Like you should probably have a pretty good indicator of how you respond to dieting long before you get to that 20, 24, 26 week prep. Otherwise, you're in for fucking hell. If you've never experienced an aggressive phase before, or like, a lower calorie target, an aggressive calorie target, you're probably going to be in for a shit time. Whereas if you have that year and a half ahead, like, oh, I can phase this and expose over different periods of time and try different techniques, longer drawn out cuts or aggressive cuts, larger surpluses, more controlled surpluses. Like you get that chance to work. And I think that's where our system is pushing so heavily, is that I'm not going to market to you coming on board in 20 weeks to start a 20-week prep. I'm marketing and advertising to you to start now, because I know this is a life we have to build, rather than this is something you just pick up and all of a sudden you can handle.
Yeah. You gotta build into handling it. But I think, like, as you said, like that's a nice way of, I guess, like Tom said, we have to experience it. Like running an aggressive tighten up phase is like, hey, like, do you actually want to get on stage? Like, we're gonna do this, but we're gonna do this for 16 to 20 weeks. Like, are you sure this is what you want to do? Like, it sucks. Like, it's not like it's easy. So I guess that can be a little like experience per se. And then like, as we said, like photo shoots and everything come into that. So we can be like, cool, do you really want to prep? All right, cool. Like, let's organize a photo shoot for 8 to 12 weeks. We're gonna smash it down. You won't be stage lean, but you'll have a solid tighten up phase. Did you love it? Yeah. Okay, cool. Now we prep for the next one.
Yeah. Now we hold
Or did you hate it? Yeah. Or did you hate it? And then go, all right, why do we want to compete then? Like, why are we competing?
Yeah. You hate the photo shoot composition, there's a high chance you're going to hate the dieting lifestyle of stage condition.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I guess like, because we'll talk on this sort of stuff forever, and the whole intent is going to have several episodes, not one gigantic one, is between us, there's X amount of years of training, competing, sports history and things like that. I guess like for anyone listening, coming on board or wanting to, I guess, know a bit more experience or know a bit more about it, what, I guess, because we've done nothing but kind of rag on the average person that shouldn't compete, what would you say between the three of us, like each one of us give an answer, but what are some of the positives that you found over time in the continued pursuit of competing and bodybuilding, where, everyone nowadays in 2023 in Australia, it's like body composition is a terrible goal and you're a shit coach if you encourage body compositional transformations and fucking weight loss or whatever else. What do you think are some of the positives that you've taken away from competing that have impacted your life?
I can go first. Basically just establishing the routine and discipline in other aspects of your life. Like, I mean, I'm sure you've talked about this before. I've definitely seen it recently. But yeah, 100%. Like, just if you're not disciplined in pursuit of bodybuilding, it's not going to work. And so you have to be there, and then it just carries over into the rest of your life. So like, the work aspects of things. I mean, anything, right? Like if you need to save for something, like you are disciplined in that process and just how your mind works now. Routine is a big one. Time management for a big part, like you're going through a prep or whatever, like you've got to fit your cardio in, you've steps realistically should just be what you normally do anyway, but you've got to make sure you've got your meals there. And yes, you might be eating less, but you still want to be able to space them out at the right times. You've got to fit your training in. If you are trying to still, like, obviously keep your relationships at a healthy level, you're trying to make time there, be proactive in your work still when you like got brain fog and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, time management, discipline, and I mean, just a work ethic in general, I suppose.
I think the biggest thing for me, I found, and like obviously we've all come from sporting backgrounds, we've all come from team sporting backgrounds, like swimming less so, but soccer itself. And I think the biggest thing for me positively about bodybuilding is the fact that it is all on me. And like that's a scary thought, and that's like a big thing. But for me, like I love the fact that yeah, Ben tells me what to do, but no one else is doing it the work.
Yeah.
I can't rely on anyone else for anything. And I think that's my biggest thing about bodybuilding is that this is purely what I do. And as Tom
Personal
said,
growth, personal development.
exactly, and it all shows on that one day. So it is
Mhm.
all of the things that you do every day that get you to that result is all based on you. And nothing else in life really is ever like that. Everything else is kind of surrounded by other people. And I think for me, that's the biggest thing I love about bodybuilding, outside of having abs.
Yeah, it's nice when you have them when they're there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think yeah, like the to kind of like add to that is there's no other sport I've done. Like, I've played pretty decent levels of rugby league, schoolboy levels of things like AFL, state levels of touch, bits of soccer, cricket,
We get
like
it, superstar.
more so that I sucked at other things and I didn't really with them. But like the fact that in all of those aspects, nothing has ever been so all inclusive and all encompassing and all requiring. Like, kind of like to touch on what you said there is like to get on stage, the result is a direct reflection of the work that I'm putting in and then how long I'm willing to put that in for. So the result I get now, yeah, sure, it's a reflection of the work at this level, but if I slack off in my off seasons or I slack off in my, tighten up phases or I slack off in future instances, the next time on stage is a direct reflection of what I did in time gone. And there's nothing else in life that I've done where that's so accurate or so accountable. And so there's just something to be, I think for a lot of people it'll be scary, but it's fucking positive because you have to take accountability and ownership at every level. There's nothing you can sort of half-ass and be kind of in, but kind of out. Like, I hate when people are like, all or nothing doesn't work. It's like, well, if you want to get on stage, it becomes all or nothing in the sense that, yeah, there's the rest of the lifestyle factors, like Tom sort of said there, if you've got relationships, partnerships, business relationships, whatever, like you're managing those, but they are all almost deterministic or held in relation to how hard you train, prep, live towards that goal.
They're part of the all. It's not like if that's part of your life and part of your prep, or whatever, that's part of the all.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah. It's
encompassing
encompassing, right? It's
process.
almost like an umbrella term. And I think that's, yeah, something that people need to understand as a positive is that, yes, it will require everything you have. And then the likelihood is that to get better, it's going to ask for more. And you can't either, you can't get away from it. And to get away from it just means you're going to get less result. And like, you can dabble in a prep or experience a prep. Like, I'm going to try it and be intuitive and not be chuck my data. And I might kind of just see how best I go and see if that pans out in the long run. The likelihood that you get a good result doing just that is so improbable that it's just not worth doing. The fact is you're going to dip your toes in, you may as well do it. And that is like going to be reflective of your result. And I think that's such a positive thing to me because I've never done anything else where it's so reflective of my effort and at the same time doesn't guarantee me anything anyway. It's just purely how long can I delay gratification? How long can I work towards that same fucking goal, the same outcome, and continue like, rugby league, you might play your 20-week or 30-week season, but that off-season phase, 90% of the average rugby league player, that's holiday time, that's piss up time, it's get on the food. Most guys come back fat, then we're going to do off-season to tighten up. This, like, you don't have that. You don't have that
Yeah,
level of downtime.
this isn't skill based. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. It's
And I think like the other thing that's the beautiful thing about bodybuilding is you learn, like where else do you learn so much about yourself?
yeah,
Like really, like where else do you sit there and go, shit, like I've done all of that and I do all of that and I've been through all of this to get there. Like other
Test
than
yourself.
life itself, like where else do we get that from? Nowhere.
yeah, and that I think is probably the part that people get scared of most is like it's going to expose you. Like you will have to do all those things, but yeah, like you said, that's such a positive return as well. Like you now see a new level of operation that you can handle. Like you can now see you have a new level of mental capacity or mental ability or resilience that you probably didn't have before because
Pain barrier.
yeah, fucking pain barrier, hunger barrier, like mentality barrier. Like you can now see this whole other level of operation that you didn't have because you put yourself through it. And that is literally the degree. Like there's no better reflection of building resilience or mental fortitude in any other sport any of us have done. Like you can train your ass off in other sports, but it's just not going to be so demanding in other aspects that, combining training, psychology, nutrition, all the things that we push here that is so important to understand is because in a prep, it brings it all out. You need to be on point with nutrition. It's not like, people are like, oh, it's 30% diet and 20% rest and 60%, 50% training. No, it's 100% training. It's 100% of your diet. It's 100% of your psychology. It's 100% of your lifestyle. And that's like, hey, it's fucking exciting to me. That makes it a positive to me.
I think prep is like the great exposure, right? It's the great exposure of who's willing to put the work in. It's the exposure of who's willing to push and who's willing. And you can see on stage, like we've been to shows where you can tell people haven't been willing to go to that length and go that time, regardless of the potential they have, regardless of the starting point, the condition, what they've done previously. And that's, I guess, like the double-edged sword of prep is that if you don't show up on the day, you don't show up on the day. It is a one-day thing, and that is all that matters. And it is very clear when people don't do that sometimes.
But I guess I kind of like finalize that point is that that means you have to enjoy the process along the way. Like if you're not someone who enjoys regiment, strictness, diet, accountability, like being hungry or training fucking hard, putting in the hours to do the cardio, posing, like if you're not someone who enjoys the overarching process, which is why I talk about so heavily the different types of goals we can have, which is process, performance, and outcome. We can't set, like, you go back and watch the YouTube episode of season B, where I said, like, I can't set a goal to be first place. I can't set a goal to be winning because it's just like, I can train towards it, but I can't be like, this is an objective, tangible metric that I want to achieve, in the sense I can control everything else. Like I can control my steps, nutrition, my posing, my fucking business work, my sleep, everything else. I can actually control that, but I can't set winning as a tangible objective outcome. I can set it as a wish list or like I hope so, because it's such a subjective sport. But it means that along the way, you have to also enjoy the entire process of it. Otherwise, like I said, it's one day for 5 minutes and then it's over.
We talk a lot, but we do get around to the same point sometimes, if you can't tell. This comes back to right at the start when we were speaking about how we got into the gym and found love and motivation for it. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It just comes around in a circle. You put the processes in place, the habits in place, you do it, you see results, then you get motivation and love for it. Same training, getting into training, and then getting into comps, and then continuing to do comps is exactly the same. It's all circular.
I agree. But I guess that brings us to a very exciting rambled end to an episode. But yeah, I guess, gentlemen, there'll be more of these to come and more exposure to us as a unit and a team, which will be good. Get more shit to talk and maybe drop some education in there. Or we just start talking more shit and drop out the education.
And I guess we get to look over the next 6 months as your guys' cheeks go this way and mine goes this way, and then we get to see what happens.
Yeah, they're getting that's the SCAF's indicator for me to drop fat is like, right, we need to tighten up when this gets too fat and your waistline gets too big. I'm like, cool, that's
sweet. Great
measures. I've got veins in my quads. I don't care. Your waist is getting fat. Okay, all right.
Do you?
I'm genetically born with big legs. Look at me. I'm mad.
Hey! Tom did biceps 5 days a week when he started. I did squats 5 days a week. So thank
you. That's fair.
I was genetically fat.
I just get fat. I got nothing else. There's nothing else going on. Give us your Instagrams and stuff like that. So anyone that isn't either following, which is probably not very likely, but if they aren't, we can start really connecting the team and into a more of a network and see everything going on.
That makes me need to actually know what my Instagram off the top of my head is.
Mine is go on, Tom.
Tomaxe _ TOMAXE _.
Cool. And mine is Rowan Herklotz, ROWAN HERKLOTS.
Fantastic.
Obviously, we're always on the Matter page as well. So
Yeah.
one. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, all that jazz and the cheesy stuff that every influencer says at the end of their stuff. Make sure you do those ones. If you have any questions, we might start doing some questions eventually as well. We'll drop some question boxes up and answer those. And who knows? We might end up as big as Bro Chat.
Who knows? I just want to be that big physically, but
Yeah, I mean, that's all I'm worried about. I don't care about the follow part.
yeah, I honestly don't care about the podcast. As long as I'm as big as Ian one day, I don't care.
Just one day.
Yeah.
Just one day, yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
train
just one
my
day.
entire life, get one day, then retire.
Yeah, I'll be done. I'm
If
happy.
I could die the next day, I'm sweet.
Yeah.
That's the plan, actually.
I'm
Sorry, I
out.
shouldn't say
We've done
that.
it. Achieved it.
I
You've now
shouldn't
got
say
to
that on
carry
the
a
podcast.
300-pound coffin, so that's on you guys.
Yeah.
That's. I just need to be bigger than the guy's coffin next to me.
Yeah. As Rich would always say, leave a big coffin.
Yeah, that's who we should idolize.
Absolutely. Wait till I get some tats, then we're good.
8-hour arm workouts. Let's go.
Why is
All right,
that not in my program already?
That's it from us. Appreciate you listening, and we will be back again soon, I am sure.